Hello, Dr. Rachel. I tried the tape, and we're going to talk about this. I tried the tape on the mouth. The first night I had to take it off, but since then I put it on every night. I'm 70 years old and have always worked out. I'm pretty much a country boy. The tape seems to do its job. I sleep well, and I have noticed the stuff below gets stiff 2 or 3 times a night. And I wake up with it at attention in the morning. This is a 70-year-old who really had noticed that he wasn't getting morning wood anymore. Now, he takes pretty good care of himself. He's a country boy. He's exercising. He's doing things. But you basically get into this habit of thinking by the time you're 70, maybe it just won't be working. Just should not be the case. And when I wake up with it at attention in the morning, thank you. I seem to have more energy all day. You take care, and thank you again. We'll keep watching Love the Natural Way with no pills. So what Charles is actually talking about is a video where I discuss how you can boost your nitric oxide production and your blood flow through nose breathing, right? So one thing I want to share about nasal breathing and how important this is. So what mouth taping rationally is really very simple. It's basically, listen, everybody's complaining, the kids are complaining, the spouse is complaining that you're snoring all the time. And then you also may notice that as you're sitting there at work, you might be like, mouth breathers typically have worse health parameters than nasal breathers. And science has gotten to the point where now we understand why. So let me share with you why all of a sudden he is getting stiff just by mouth taping, right? So this picture here, what we have are a picture of your sinuses, right? So some of you get sinus infections and you're taking a bunch of antibiotics all the time. It's the minute sinus pressure happens. But our sinuses are this green area, the blue area, and the purple area. So basically they sit in this pattern right here. And what we know now is that this is one of the biggest reservoirs of nitric oxide in the body. And when I say reservoir, like when we exhale, when we breathe out of our nose, this is how they figured it out. They realized when you exhale, that nitric oxide is kind of coming out. So what they did is they wanted to see, is it the nose? Is it right in here that's making the nitric oxide, or is it way up in here? And sure, right in here does make nitric oxide, but where the nitric oxide magic happens are in the sinus cavities. And it makes sense because we need nitric oxide to go into the lungs to keep our lung blood pressure down. Nitric oxide availability keeps all of our blood pressure down. It regulates blood pressure and it regulates blood flow. So if you remember our conversation, and you may not have been with me then, or you may not have heard this, I said, when you're having sex, what you want to do, which is not only going to be sexy for your partner, but it's going to make you stiffer right in that moment, is going, is humming. And if you don't believe me, I want to share this with you. When you hum, look at this study here. Humming nitric oxide and paranasal sinus obstruction. This was done back in 2003. And what this article and this study basically shows is that the amount of nitric oxide produced in the body, in the reservoirs, went way up during humming than it did when you just regularly breathe out, in and out through your nose. So for nitric oxide production, boosting stiffness, getting stiffer and harder, bringing back nitric oxide flow so that you can actually bring back those nighttime erections, for some of you, it is going to be as simple as making sure that when you're asleep at night, you're not up there, right? How many of you, we've all been guilty. And I tell you, that's the one thing that one of the things that I am such a stickler on in my house is close your mouth, breathe out of your nose, because we want that nitric oxide to be produced, particularly because everyone in my house is Black, African American. And I know for a fact that as African Americans, we have a lot of trouble with nitric oxide synthase, which is important for nitric oxide production. And nitric oxide is important for not just stiffness, but our blood pressure and for every other thing that happens in our body. This is ultimately why nitric oxide is so very important. So I wanted to put this article up here because I want you to know that when I'm telling you to breathe out of your mouth, when I'm telling you to shut your mouth, when I'm saying maybe you want to look into some mouth tape, that you understand where the science is coming from. This was back in 2003. We've known this. So a lot of this information never gets to us, or it just sounds fake. This is not fake. This is not a drill. Your nitric oxide, your biggest nitric oxide reservoir in your nasal sinuses. So if you have chronic nasal infections, if you have allergic rhinitis, if you get a lot of allergies, that's why it's really important to make sure that we're taking care of this area. Are we trying nasal sinus rinses, right? Are you making sure that you have the right probiotics on board? You want to try all of that before you end up taking those antibiotics every couple months to fight this, because those antibiotics, they can break down the tendons in your body. Before you know it, you've got a fracture, so be very mindful that this area of the body is way more important than anyone ever says it is. And that's why this gentleman has had such a major experience with mouth taping. The big homie Joe says, I have sleep apnea, so I tape my mouth every night. So before you start mouth taping, everybody, talk to your doctor about it. But I just read a really great scholarly article, a clinical trial from an otolaryngologist who basically is advocating that he has had more cure rate with mouth taping and sleep apnea than he has by putting someone on CPAP and all of that. So talk to your doctor, see if it's a right solution for you, because it's not going to be right for everyone. But one of the first things I correct in gentlemen is mouth tape. Are you sitting around too much of the day with your mouth open? This is oftentimes, too, why we train athletes, and we see some of them, and you might see some of them with the mouth tape. And you're like, dude, why is your mouth taped open while you're playing basketball? And it's because the coach or the trainer recognizes that we will get more out of a player if he has that extra nitric oxide boost, because nitric oxide is huge for stamina and for exercise capabilities, right? So some people are training with masks on or designed to keep your mouth shut so that you can actually benefit from the nitric oxide boost that you get from the nasal sinuses. This is great. What about when wearing a CPAP? So you can't do a CPAP and mouth tape at the same time, never sin. But what you can do is speak with your ENT doctor about whether or not he feels as though or she feels as though you would be a good candidate for mouth taping. And so what I would actually suggest, and I'm going to see if my team will post these resources afterwards, is showing them the data and the articles on mouth taping and sleep apnea. Because, see, the problem with using the CPAP for sleep apnea, unfortunately, is that it doesn't address the underlying cause, right? It's just basically a Band-Aid. It's just going to support you while you're sleeping, but it doesn't help you lose weight, which could help with the sleep apnea. It's not correcting anything. But what they found with mouth taping is that it actually helps correct the problem. Making sure that breathing is happening through the nasal passages is such a big deal that Native Americans actually used to, when they would wrap the babies up into like a papoose, they would actually situate the babies so that they made sure that the mouth was closed, because they knew, culturally speaking, they knew somehow or the other, I don't know if they knew the science behind it or what, but they knew that children were healthier, happier, smarter, and they grow up actually looking different if they keep their mouth closed and blow out of their nose. There's a lot of science behind just, even if you think about it, it's almost like a waterway. If we have water coursing through an area, eventually the water can erode and form its own pathway, right? So the science behind nasal breathing and making sure that air is moving through your nose at night is that movement of air actually starts to heal the sinuses and the nasal passages. That's why we have to fight to get air coming through the nose. It's if you have polyps or chronic allergies or chronic sinusitis, it's worth it to really spend a lot of time fixing that, because what we actually know is that polyps in the sinuses are actually associated with hypertension. And why is that? Because the nitric oxide isn't being produced. And so the blood pressure is getting higher because those blood vessels can't expand and accept blood flow, right? So nitric oxide is such an important thing. And if you can make more of it simply by being mindful when you're typing, sitting at your desk, making sure you're not like, but that your mouth is actually closed, being mindful at night, that your mouth is closed, all of that makes a huge difference. And if you think about it, the nights where you sleep on the couch like that and you didn't even realize you were there, you're like, oh, I feel like crap the next day. It may not necessarily be because you were on the couch. It may be because your mouth was hanging open and you missed out on an opportunity to oxygenate your body in the way that it wants to be.